Evening, I'm Spot On Weather meteorologist Matthew Euler, and welcome to my Teleconnections discussion for the 6th of October 2023. And so I plan to start doing these again now that we've entered into the month of October, and the teleconnections or these climate drivers are going to play a significant role in our sensible weather. Starting off the first video of the month of October, I figured I'd throw a little bit of Halloween theme here since we are entering that part of the year. Some pumpkins here in the dark lit up, a lot of different faces and different shapes, different eye shapes and mouths and all that. And so I plan to put on the title slide of these teleconnection discussion videos just fall related and Halloween related themes over the coming week. So I hope you enjoy these pictures that I share. All right, so let's go ahead and begin this discussion. All right, so starting off with the 500 millibar level, which is about 18,000 feet above the ground, we're going to take a look and examine, mainly focused on the this portion, the northern hemisphere up in here. So I'm not really going to be focusing much down here in the southern hemisphere, around the Roaring 40 latitude line or anything like that. But let's go ahead and take a look and examine northern hemisphere, the various short waves at the 500 millibar level. We basically are looking at shortwave ridges that are indicated by these brighter colors here. More of these orangish colors are the ridges. Beneath the ridges, you typically get fair weather. Additionally, you get above normal temperatures. When you get into the blues, the greens, and the purples, that's associated with upper level troughs, these shortwave troughs of 500 millibars, and they are generally indicative of unsettled conditions and cooler than normal temperatures. So we are entering the time of year where we're kind of transitioning between the summer into the winter. We're starting to see a little more action, a little more energy in the jet stream. The jet stream winds are starting to accelerate a little bit more now as we enter into the fall season. So let's go ahead and examine things. I'll start here over in Siberia. We have an upper level trough right in this location over central Siberia at the present time, with an upper level ridge over eastern Siberia right in this location. As we move from west to east, we continue our journey now down, actually just a little bit further south. There's actually an upper level trough that is located off the coast of Japan with ridging out ahead of the trough. There's this weak shortwave ridge here right on the front side out ahead of this deep closed low near the coast of Japan. And then we have another trough, this blue shading here, generally across the western Bering Sea, extending southward into the western Aleutian Islands. Downstream of that, we have an anomalously stronger high height center or a very strong ridge. Now, the highest height center, the general high height center, is located off the U.S. Pacific Northwest coast, off of Washington, Oregon, and you see this ridging configuration. It's a fairly significant one extending up into western Canada at the present time. Downstream of this anomalously high height center or this anomalous ridge, upper level ridge, we have a trough that is deepening. And this deepening trough is going to be digging into the eastern U.S., into the mid-Atlantic, over the next 12 to 18 hours. And the configuration of this digging trough is going to allow a cold front, a fairly strong surface cold front, to move across the mid-Atlantic and clearing the mid-Atlantic coast tomorrow evening on Saturday, the 7th of October, 2023, really ushering in one of the more significant first chilly air masses of the season for the Midwest as well as the eastern U.S. Moving our way now towards the east, we see a anomalously high height center, very strong upper level ridge extending from the Canadian Maritimes northeastward to Greenland. And then downstream of that, we have another deep closed low, upper level low at 500 millibars, positioned over the central North Atlantic, followed by another ridge. You see this another ridge here, upper level ridge extending up in from Spain northward into southern England at the present time. So there's a lot going on. There's a lot of meridional flow going on. What I mean by meridional is there's some major dips in the jet stream that are occurring right now. You kind of see the packing of these isoheights these height contours, these solid black lines, how tightly packed they are, specifically across the Northeast Pacific into the Gulf of Alaska, and then up and over on top of this ridge, right on into the northern plains and Midwest today. And then you see where these height contours are packed close together, indicating very strong moving wind speed, very strong moving winds, high wind speeds through these areas. So we have quite a wavy-like structure going on right now across the, really, North America has really got a lot of waviness to the jet stream right now. All right, so now let's take a look and examine some of the teleconnections. And forgive me as I blow my nose a little bit. I tell you what, we need rain where I'm at because I don't know about you, but being allergy sufferers in the fall sometimes can really not be a fun thing. So forgive me for occasionally blowing my nose or sounding like I'm kind of congested. So I'm just going to work through this video anyway. So these are the Madden-Julian oscillation, MJO phases, and the MJO generally ranges from phases 1 through phase 8. And generally what I like to do is I like to look at the satellite imagery. Of course, there's other tools out there as well to examine to see kind of like what phase are we right now currently in for the MJO. Now the MJO has played a significant role in past fall and winter seasons, specifically the winter seasons where we get stuck in one particular phase. So again, phases 1 through 8, you kind of see where these, wherever the enhanced area of convection or rising air motion is occurring. For example, if we had enhanced convection or rising air motion clouds and precip around this location where you see the 2 and 3, those phases are associated with convection over the Indian Ocean. Phases 4 and 5 over the maritime continent, otherwise known as Australia. And then phases 7 and 8 get closer to that international date line at 180-degree west longitude. And if you go to phase 1, you're closer over here to Madagascar and just off of the east coast of Africa. So currently today on the Pacific satellite imagery, over the eastern Pacific here on the left, we have a frontal system generally to the west, into the Gulf of Alaska, to the west of the Pacific Northwest of the United States. And you'll notice over here in this particular area, there's not much in the way of clouds or any kind of frontal structure to these clouds, any kind of clouds in general, and that's associated with the upper level ridge. We have tropical moisture, some disturbances. We do have a tropical system at this location, but in general, we have a lot of unsettled weather. You kind of see the intertropical convergence zone right here. This discontinuous band of convective clouds indicated by the brighter white cloud tops here. So there's a lot of activity here, specifically south of Baja right now, across the tropical eastern Pacific. Over here on the right, I'm showing you a satellite imagery from earlier today. The big feature is this Typhoon 14 Whiskey. It actually clipped through southern Taiwan before making its way further to the west and is now approaching the southeast coast of China. This was, by the way, this image was taken, I would say, let's see, about 9 hours ago. So this is most likely already inland and probably rapidly weakening. Additionally, we have tropical disturbances that are located generally south and east of the Marianas Islands here, specifically Guam. And these are always interesting areas. I've been out in this location quite a bit in my time with the Naval Service, and so I've observed a lot of different features out here while being out in that location. So, yep, it's an interesting dynamic environment out here in the Western Pacific for sure. Now you do see additionally some thunderstorm development generally over Vietnam as well as some in the Philippine Sea here. Looking at the MJO temperature composites, this is the Madden-Julian oscillation temperature composites on the left. Now the blue shading on these composites indicates cooler than normal temps, and then the yellow and orange is warmer than normal temps. So in general, for the months of October, November, and December, let's just look at this real quick. We start at phase 8, and we notice it's got a blue shading into the mid-Atlantic, New England, right in the northern plains, the Midwest. Also in parts of southwestern U.S., including California, Nevada. And you see the orange shading of phase 8 here over Texas. So generally, blue again generally indicates MJO phase 8 would indicate below normal temps for the mid-Atlantic, New England. If we go to MJO phase 1, you'll notice things change a little bit. We have a little bit more milder temps from the Gulf Coast right up the eastern seaboard to Maine. And then the cooler than normal temps are further to the west with MJO phase 1. Phase 2, you kind of see the colder temperatures again in the eastern U.S., above normal temps across the northern plains, upper Midwest, and then cooler than normal along the west coast. So, bottom line here is where whatever MJO phase we're in, ranging from 1 to 8, depending on where that rising vertical air motion is occurring across the tropical Pacific, Western Pacific, and Indian Oceans, really does make a difference on the overall vertical circulation, the downstream effects on the United States temperatures, as well as the precipitation regimes. Let's take a look at the actual forecast now. Starting today with the 6th of October and extending out to the 20th of October, this is the GFS ensemble forecast. And this solid green line represents the overall mean or average of all these yellow lines represent individual model members of the ensemble. So in general, what we're looking at is MJO is generally on the brink of a phase 8 going into phase 8. You see where it is right here, right now? And then potentially transitioning into phase 1 and just generally kind of hanging out in this area, 8 to 1. But you notice the small inner circle, okay? If the MJO is particularly rotating inside the smaller inner circle, the center of this MJO phase diagram, we generally don't have much in the way of impacts. It's when this particular line or forecast, it gets well further out, well far away from the center of this diagram. That's when the major impacts occur. So right now, we're not looking at anything significant as far as the MJO goes. You kind of see it right there on that border of the small inner circle, kind of working its way outward towards phase 1, potentially phase 8, according to the GFS ensemble forecast system. Looking at the GFS operational model here now, same time period, 6 to 20 October, and the GFS operational is now, it's this blue line. So kind of like shows you where we're starting. You see the MJO working its way slowly out of this small inner circle here with minimal impacts to the U.S. weather, and then working its way down, slightly weak into phase 1 and 2, and then back into the inner circle. So overall, based on what I'm seeing here, it is leaning towards phases 8 and 1, where you'd have that convection in the Western Hemisphere or in Africa, that area, okay, between now and the 20th of October. Now the CFS forecast, this is a 30-day CFS forecast, which is produced by Kyle McRitchie. This is what it's showing. We're currently located here in early October at the center. Eventually, what's interesting is, we'll have to watch the trend on this, is the CFS 30-day outlook out to the 5th of November is showing the MJO getting a little bit stronger. See where this red line is? From Halloween 10/31 right on over to 11/5, the 5th of November. How it's rotating from that small inner circle of the null phase, minimal impacts to U.S. weather, all the way out into phases 6 and working its way more magnified, greater magnitude into phase 7, where we're having convection in the Western Pacific in early November. So, what does this mean? If we go to phase 6, let's say if it gets more amplified into phase 6, for the months of October, November, December, it's just barely slightly cooler along the mid-Atlantic coastal area, New England coastal areas. Everywhere else is a fairly mild United States if it did work its way out into phase 6. If it worked into phase 7, we'd have a milder than normal temperatures across the southeast, including Florida, Georgia's, working our way into the Carolinas, Virginia, up to Pennsylvania if it worked into phase 7. The present time, alternating between phase 8, we'd expect cooler than normal temperatures across the mid-Atlantic and New England. Phase 1 would be a little bit different, okay? If we went to phase 2, it would be cool again. And by the way, these MJO temperature composites change throughout the course of a year. I pulled the October, November, December composites based on the MJO phases. Next month, I'm going to use the November, December, and January composites. So this is never like a stagnant situation. Looking at the latest El Niño update, we're looking at a Niño 3.4 index at the temperature is about 1.14 degrees Celsius above normal in the Niño 3.4 region. You kind of see the history by this blue line and how there's been gradual warming within the Niño 3.4 region. And I'll show you where that region is located here on the next slide. But in general, I want you to pay attention from like right around the beginning of September to present time. The past 30 days, there's not really been a lot of change. It's almost like the water temperatures have leveled off somewhat across the Niño 3.4 region. And that could play a very important role in the future weather, specifically in the late fall and winter season. We'll see how strong this gets. If you look at the overall sea surface temperature anomalies here in degrees Celsius on the left, anything in the orange coloring indicates above normal water temperatures. Anything in the blue shading and coloring indicates below normal temperatures. A couple features I really want to point out. Obviously, we have this El Nino situation. It's more East Pacific based. Here off the coast of South America, the warmest temperatures. They do extend out a little bit further toward the west, but in general, we got a classic El Nino signature at this location. And then up in the Gulf of Alaska, we have cooler than normal temperatures. We have a cooler than normal stripe of water or stretch of water from south of Hawaii there. We got well above normal water temperatures off the coast of Japan to the Northwest Pacific. There is a little bit of a cooling patch of water there off the east coast of the United States, and it's above normal water temperatures across the North Atlantic, south of Greenland, in association with a fairly strong AMO situation. And then the IOD, Indian Ocean Dipole, look at what's going on here. This is a strongly, notice how deeply blue this color is, just to the west of Singapore. You're seeing some significantly colder than normal waters there in the eastern Indian Ocean, and then they're warmer than normal in the western Indian Ocean. That's a phenomenon known as a positive. That's a positive Indian Ocean Dipole, IOD. So we'll continue to watch these areas closely as we progress through the autumn season. Looking at the ENSO, El Nino Southern Oscillation, the ENSO intensity classifications, I kind of broke it down here. I mentioned that we're at plus 1.14 C in that Niño 3.4 region. 1.14 C is equating to a moderate strength El Nino at the present time. You can see the different classifications out here, weak, moderate, and strong, and their temperature range criteria. Additionally, look at where we're looking here, the Niño 3.4 region. This is where we really want to identify, what the water temperatures are doing. This is what NOAA uses to classify the El Nino or La Nina. And generally, it's bounded by the latitudes 5 degrees north to 5 degrees south, and the longitude stretches for Niño 3.4 region from 120 west to 170 west. So really, this is the area of interest. Looking at the latest, this should be El Nino. My apologies, this is not a La Nina. We're not anywhere near it. I just forgot to change header on this one. But in general, this is the latest NOAA Climate Prediction Center ENSO probabilities, which was issued last month. Still waiting for a little bit longer in October here, and this will be updated. But in general, you kind of see the months, 3 months listed at a time here. We're currently in October, November, December, 100% chance of El Nino. That makes sense. It's occurring November, December, January, 100%, and it was ultimately by January, February, March time period. You kind of see these red vertical these bar graphs here getting a little bit lower in height, and that's an association with eventually a weakening El Nino as we head to next spring. But overall, there's a 95% chance of El Nino conditions this upcoming winter. And the intensity is over here on the right. This figure was updated on the 20th of September, so IRI, International Research Institute, will update this on a monthly basis, so we'll be on the lookout for the latest update on this when it comes in. But in general, you're kind of seeing a difference here between dynamical and statistical models over here on the right. My overall thought is I really believe we're going to be sitting like in between this reddish maroon line and then this green and blue line. I think we're going to be sitting right in this territory for a peak in El Nino in the month of December, then overall a drop off after that into more moderate range territory. So moderate to strong is the projection for the upcoming winter for El Nino. Now let's look at some of the Arctic oscillation and other teleconnections. So Arctic oscillation, a review, negative Arctic oscillation on the left, positive Arctic oscillation on the right, and there's a big difference here. So when you get a negative Arctic oscillation, you get this huge upper level ridge that builds northward into the high latitudes, so the polar areas. So you get beneath this ridge unusual warm temperatures across the Arctic areas. And what happens is the jet stream takes a major dip into the United States, specifically the Midwest and East Coast. And you get much colder air to funnel down from the Northwest into the United States during the winter season. When you get a positive AL here on the right, on the other hand, you get more of a west-east jet stream. All the Arctic air, the most frigid air, stays bottled up in the Arctic itself over the North Pole in the winter season when you get a positive Arctic oscillation. And by the way, the polar vortex in the stratosphere tends to usually be much stronger as well. Looking at the forecast for the Arctic oscillation, now this is from the European Ensemble Prediction System, EPS, 50 per term members. The green line represents the average of all the ensemble members. Generally showing here on the left, we start at a negative level. We're in a negative phase of the AO. Gets close to neutral around between the 11th and 12th of October, and then dips back down pretty significantly negative here by the 15th to the 18th of October, and then goes back towards neutral conditions, according to the European EPS. The European EPS 46-day forecast, 50 per term members. The green line again represents the average of all the ensemble members, shows a negative phase of the EPS, of the Arctic oscillation, working its way towards neutral, then back to negative again. This is interesting. The 46-day European Ensemble Prediction System EPS is showing a significantly negative AO as we get into the first portion of November. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on. Looking at the GEFS global, the GFS Ensemble Forecasting System, showing a negative phase of the AO like the other two members I showed you, the EPS, and then a major dip further down to negative for the AO between the 12th and the 16th of October. Eventually, it works its way up closer to this neutral line after the 19th of October. Looking at the North Atlantic oscillation, let's take a look. Positive NAO phase on the left, generally associated with a more west to east jet stream. So all the cold air pretty much remains well to the north. The warmer conditions are across the mid latitudes. You look at this across the east coast with a positive NAO. You get more of a milder pattern for the east coast to the southeast. And then also it's warmer and wet across northern Europe when we get a positive NAO phase. The jet stream, again, is pretty much west-east, more zonal. With a negative NAO phase, on the other hand, we get a pretty good dip in the jet stream here across the eastern United States in the wintertime. That could potentially equate to much colder and snowier conditions, specifically across the mid-Atlantic, with a negative NAO. And then you get this huge upper-level ridge across the North Atlantic into Greenland, followed by another dip in the jet stream there across Western Europe. And it's usually warmer and wetter than normal across the Mediterranean when you get a negative NAO phase as well. And it's colder and drier up in Northern Europe. Looking at the forecast now, the European EPS, NAO, have 50 per term members. Pay attention to this green line here. That's your ensemble average of all the members. Generally showing a negative start to the NAO. I'll show you the 500 millibar charts here in a bit to back that up. But generally negative NAO right on through the 11th to the 12th of October, and then it becomes more neutral before dipping a little negative again, and then comes back up to slightly positive after the 18th of October, according to the EPS forecast for NAO. The 46-day, more longer extended range NAO forecast showing that negative side or phase to the NAO, working its way up towards neutral, then working its way slightly positive for maybe a couple days there, 2021 October, and then it dips. Look at this. Similar to the AO, we see that tendency for the NAO to go more steeply negative the first week of November. So that's going to be something to watch. And then the NOAA GEFS V12 forecast for the NAO showing a negative tendency to start. And then it pretty much remains negative all the way through the 16th of October, the NAO, according to this model run. And then it works its way up slightly positive from the 17th to the ending date, 22 October. Let's take a look at the Pacific North American PNA forecast now. This is a huge player right now. Whenever we get this positive PNA, this does increase the chances of below normal temperatures across the eastern U.S. And what sets up with a positive PNA is more of a western ridge from the west coast of the United States on up into western Canada. Sometimes the ridge extends all the way up into Alaska with a positive PNA. And then downstream of that, we get this deep upper level trough where we get much colder than normal conditions across the eastern U.S. with a positive PNA. We flip the script and we look at a negative PNA here on the bottom right, the graphic. And when we have negative PNA, that's increased chances of above normal temperatures for the eastern U.S. And we saw this last winter, specifically in the months of January and February. Eventually, a sudden stratospheric warming event occurred in February this past year, And that really helped to change the pattern a little bit with a weakened polar vortex after that sudden stratospheric warming. So overall, negative PNA, think trough, very stormy, cooler than normal temps across western Canada and the western U.S. with a negative PNA, and then a ridge downstream over the southeastern U.S. up to the mid-Atlantic, and you get milder and drier than normal conditions there with negative PNA. Let's look at the forecast. The European EPS, PNA 50% member forecast showing a strongly positive PNA. This is pretty good strength here, all the way up to the positive 3 value line here on the 9th to the 10th of October. Dips closer to neutral here around the 11th and 12th, but then it goes back strongly positive again between the 13th and the 20th of October. Looking at the longer range, this is the 46-day EPS forecast for PNA. Look how strongly positive it is. In great agreement, right on through the 11th of October, dips a little bit lower or decreases in magnitude down to a value of about positive 1 on the scale. And then it goes back up more strongly positive again, right on through, this is showing all the way through about the 25th of October before it goes slightly negative, the PNA, in late October, and then becomes more neutral after that, right on through mid-November. Looking at the Jeffs V12 PNA forecast, strongly positive, similar to the other two I just showed you previous to this slide. Strongly positive through the 11th of October, and then strongly positive again, 13 to 20 October, before transitioning down to neutral towards the 20th to the 22nd of October. For the Eastern Pacific Oscillation Forecast, EPO, a negative EPO situation, you get this sprawling upper level high over the Gulf of Alaska, and that is generally positioned over a upper level low just to the east of the Hawaiian Islands. And then look what happens here from the Arctic area. You get these strong Arctic highs that are just these bubble highs that come down and move southeastward towards Canada and eventually into the upper Midwest and northern plains. And so you get much colder air kind of seeping down into the United States with a negative EPO. When you get a positive EPO, which this is kind of like what we'd expect for the winter season with a strong El Nino, you typically get a stronger than normal Aleutian low. Now, the position of this Aleutian low is very critical, obviously, because if it's over here, closer to the west coast, that could direct milder air much further north here. If it's positioned further back, that could pump the heights up over here and then cause a troughing downstream across the eastern U.S. But you notice with the positive EPO, all the cold air stays up over the North Pole or the Arctic area in general. And it's generally mild with a west to east jet stream across the United States with a positive EPO. Here's the forecast for the EPO. This is the European Ensemble Prediction System EPS, showing a negative phase to EPO. Okay, so we're saying negative, that means we'd have this situation, right? Upper level high or ridge in the Gulf of Alaska. And then that's going to drop down to negative territory though, by the middle of the month, extending right on through 19 October. It's a negative tendency. Excuse me. So we have a negative EPO there. See if we can keep going here. Apologize for that. All right, yep, we can keep going. Okay. But in general, you see this dip down to negative here, the green line, the average all the ensemble members, working our way up towards the neutral conditions after the 19th of October. If we look at the overall European EPS longer range forecast, 46-day forecast, showing a strongly positive EPO, eventually working its way slightly negative around the 16th of October, and then dipping negative again between 25 October right on over to 6 November. The Jeffs V12 EPO forecast, 30% members, negative for the next couple days for the EPO, working its way positive, and then back to neutral, and then back negative again between 14 and 20 October. So something to keep an eye on. Now let's take a look at the polar vortex, and let's see what's going on with it. All right, so this time of year, typically what we see is the polar vortex generally temperatures really starting to cool across the polar area here, generally. And so the blue shading, the blue colors here indicate cooling temperatures, while the tans and oranges indicate warming temperatures. So right now, the GFS latest forecast, the 6th of October on the left, and then a week later on the 13th, next Friday on the right, we're expecting cooling temperatures in the stratosphere to continue as the polar vortex really starts taking shape. And you look over here on the right, this is interesting. We do have some warming that's occurring in the stratosphere over Siberia, the GFS forecast for by next Friday. Looking at the Jeff's model, this is the very similar, stronger cooling is evident by 13 October. And 13 October is over here on the right. So you see the green coloring here that indicates cooler, even more strongly cooler or anomalously cooler temperatures in the stratosphere across southeastern Canada by next Friday the 13th. Warming is showing up on this as well for next Friday across Siberia, Alaska, and western Canada is up in the stratosphere. Here is a look from, this is courtesy of ZD Lawrence. This is the zonal mean zonal winds and the stratospheric temperature. Here are the winds on the left, and here's the stratospheric temperatures in Kelvin on the right. For the 10 hectopascal or 10 millibar level at 60 degrees north. So based on what we're looking at here today, the wind speeds in the stratosphere are, let's see, about 17, 18 meters per second. And over time, this is the forecast from the various models showing you a little bit of a drop off in those wind speeds potentially on 3 of the 4 models as we get into just beyond the 10th of October. Between 10 and 15 October, we could actually see a little bit of weakening of the winds of the stratosphere. So that's interesting. If we look over here on the right, we're showing you the temperatures in Kelvin, and they're pretty steady between 215 and 220 Kelvin. All right. Bottom line here on the left graphic, by the way, before I move on, the lower these values get for the mean zonal winds in the stratosphere, that is indicative of a weakening stratospheric polar vortex. And if you get a sudden stratospheric warming, you're going to see these temperatures spike dramatically in the stratosphere as well. So we don't see that in the future. If we look at the European EPS 500 millibar level geopotential heights and anomalies now. All right, so I'm doing the European ensemble prediction system, the EPS European on this particular slide, all 4 images. I'm starting with the 6th of October on the upper left. This is 9 October, upper right. Bottom left is 12 October, and then bottom right is 15 October. So what are the major things that stick out to you on these upper level forecast charts? Okay. Well, today, this is the current one here in the upper left, the 6th of October, 2023. We have this anomalously high height center or anomalous ridging occurring right along the west coast of Canada. There is a deepening trough, as I mentioned earlier when I started the presentation, generally over the upper Midwest. This is going to dive and deepen further southeast over the next 12 to 18 hours. We also have an upper level ridge associated with a negative NAO working its way up towards Greenland. Over time, on the right here, now this is the forecast for Columbus Day, this Monday, the 9th of October. Look what happens. So we have a deepening trough just off the west coast of Canada. We still have this blocking, though, that's occurring from south central Canada all the way to Greenland. So we have a blocking situation over the top. What do I mean? Block over the top. That means higher heights over lower heights. So we see remnants of Felipe, the tropical cyclone, coming up and staying off the east coast. It's going to get absorbed, and it's going to just sit here as a fairly significant upper level low initially by Monday the 9th. So you got this strong upper level low, you got a deep trough extending to the mid-Atlantic. You still have some of this North Atlantic ridging going on associated with a negative NAO. What happens here in the forecast at the bottom left by the 12th of October, we still have that blocking over the top, everybody. So this has got no, it has no wishes to move or change or nothing to change really up here. We still see upper level ridging and anomalously high heights with these brown shadings and these maroon colors. Over the top, north of lower heights. So we still see the closed low over southeastern Canada by next Thursday, the 12th of October. We have a little bit of troughing now that has moved in and replaced ridging into the Intermountain West. So that's kind of interesting. And in the bottom right here, I'm showing you the forecast of 500 millibar heights and anomalies. Excuse me. This one is for, again, well, let's see, this is next Sunday, the 15th of October. You see higher than normal heights across Canada, central Canada, And then you have a trough, another trough moving into the eastern U.S., fairly deep trough. Let's move on. Looking at the Jeff's forecast now, similar dates. 6 October in the upper left. Upper right, 9 October. Bottom left, 12 October. And bottom right, 15 October. The high height centers for today, it lines up very well, of course, because this is today, 6th of October, so very good agreement. Positive PNA, negative NAO, deepening trough in between. Over here on the right is the forecast from the Jeffs. Very much in agreement with the European ensemble system. Deep close low over southeastern Canada by Monday, Columbus Day. Deep trough into the United States. First big chill of the season for many east of the Mississippi River. And we still see that ridging or those anomalous heights over the top. We do have a little bit of a deepening upper level low or closed system here moving towards the Pacific Northwest. Bottom left, this is for the forecast for the 12th of October, next Thursday. We still see an anomalous ridge over central Canada, and we have lower heights beneath this blocking. All right? This is something that you would really see after a sudden stratospheric warming and a much weaker stratospheric polar vortex. You'd get like higher heights up here like this, and you'd get lower than normal heights across the mid latitudes by these blue and green colors. They indicate the lower heights. You would have this very similar pattern. This is really interesting, this early already. The bottom right, showing you the forecast for the 15th of October, showing generally the troughing continued and persisting there. A new trough kind of settles into the eastern U.S., the eastern seaboard, and mid-Atlantic by next Sunday. The Aleutian Low looking fairly strong here off the, just south of the Aleutian Islands. And look at this ridging still is in place. So we're not expecting much change. This upper level pattern is what I'm getting at. Here's my final thoughts on tonight's video. The Madden-Julian oscillation MJO is in the null phase right now. Two potentially weaker phases, 8 and 1. That's the forecast. It could move into phases 8 and 1, but it's going to be fairly weak. No significant magnitude to those phases right on through the 20th of October. Now the CFS 30-day forecasting, CFS 30-day forecast is for a more pronounced rotation to phase 6 in early November. By the way, this just kind of shows you the breakdown for this time of year. Phase 8 favors cooler temps. Notice I put cooler temps across eastern U.S. because we are in October and not in December or January. Phase 1 favors milder temps across the eastern U.S. And then if we were to go into phase 6 in early November, that would favor near average temps across the eastern U.S. A moderate El Nino is in place, and those conditions continue across the equatorial eastern and central Pacific. As I showed you right now, the anomaly is positive 1.14 degrees Celsius or 1.14 degrees Celsius above normal water in the Niño 3.4 region. This generally favors troughing and cooler temps along the southern U.S. into the southeastern U.S. when we have El Nino conditions. Sea surface temperature anomalies overall across the rest of the oceans. We see cooler than normal water across the Gulf of Alaska right now, as well as the Northeast Pacific. In association with a negative PDO, we have warmer than normal water over the North Central Pacific. And by the way, that negative PDO generally favors upper level ridging and milder temperatures across the eastern U.S., troughing over the western U.S. Models are indicating a neutral to slightly negative Arctic oscillation or AO phase right on through the 22nd of October. And what's interesting, we'll watch this, the 46-day EPS, European Ensemble Prediction System, indicates a more pronounced negative phase in early November. A negative phase favors cold temps across the eastern U.S., and that's generally when you have the higher pressure and the warmer temps across the Arctic and lower pressure and colder temps across the mid-latitudes. Now, a positive phase, the AO on the other hand, would favor warmer temperatures across the eastern U.S. with a more zonal west to east jet stream configuration. And models are indicating a negative NAO phase through the 12th of October, then a neutral to slightly positive phase from 13 to 22 October. The 46-day EPS, the longer range EPS, forecasting a more pronounced negative phase of the NAO, also in early November, similar to the AO. And it just kind of shows you negative NAO phase favors cold temps across the eastern U.S., large blocking ridge, upper level ridge over the northwest Atlantic. Positive phase, the NAO favors warm temps across the eastern U.S. And then finally, my last slide today, models are indicating a strongly positive PNA right on through the 12th of October. Now, I think this is a main player of the upcoming 2 weeks of the upper air pattern, with ridging in the western U.S. and the western Canada, and then troughing across the eastern U.S. primarily. So we have a strongly positive PNA through the 12th of October, and then we get another period of strongly positive PNA from the 14th to the 20th of October. Neutral conditions are favored after the 20th of October. This kind of shows you when you have a positive PNA phase, you get below normal heights and trough in colder temps over the eastern U.S. If you get a negative PNA, it would be the opposite effect. All right, so models are indicating a strongly positive Eastern Pacific Oscillation EPO through the 13th of October. This is followed by a negative EPO 14 to 20 October, and that negative EPO favors an upper level ridge into the Gulf of Alaska and Northeast Pacific, with a downstream trough and colder temps from the northern plains to the east coast. So we are seeing it going negative from the 14th to the 20th October. So we'll have a combination of a negative EPO plus a positive PNA. Those are two recipes, two teleconnections that will signal more of a cooler pattern in the eastern U.S. And then the models are also indicating a weak stratospheric polar vortex through late October. Temps are continuing to cool in the polar stratosphere. We do see potential slight weakening of the vortex based on the latest model guidance between the 15th and the 20th of October. I showed you those zonal mean zonal winds, how they slightly decreased or got weaker. And a weakened polar vortex in the stratosphere favors cooler temps across the eastern U.S. Overall assessment, then, taking into account all the things we discussed this evening, with the teleconnections, the strongly positive PNA, along with the continued upper level ridging, with higher heights as the main theme over the forecast period. We're seeing higher heights stretch from central Canada right on over to Greenland with a negative NAO at the present time. Coolest or coldest temps will be located across the eastern U.S. over the period through the 20th of October, with the mildest temps beneath the ridge across western Canada. The MJO appears to be more weak in this case for the forecast period. It should not have a major bearing on the U.S. weather through the 20th of October. We'll continue to watch it, though, for any changes, while moderate El Nino conditions, continue to persist. Overall, we're expecting a couple of storm systems and cold frontal passages to kind of transit across the U.S., right across the eastern U.S., reinforcing the cooler air mass. So we got one major dip in the jet stream and troughing occurring this weekend, Columbus Day weekend for the eastern U.S., and then we get another reinforcing trough by the end of next week into next weekend. All right, that's all I've got this evening for the teleconnections discussion. I apologize. Again, allergies are definitely not a fun thing. So thanks for bearing with me today on the video. And that's all I got for right now. There's a lot more exciting things coming up here in the future. So stay with us at Spot on Weather. Thank you for subscribing to my channel. And until next time, take care and God bless everyone.